Hello, everyone. I am Jalon Strong, Realtor of Dreams to Keys Realty. Thank you all for coming to the YouTube channel. And please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any content that we post on our channel here. It looks like StreamYard is a little delayed on the video, but it sounds like the audio is okay. As we do with any other live, we talk about the link in the bio highlight of the week. And we're going to do that again today. The link in the bio highlight of the week is Rent Reporters. Rent Reporters is a company that we have an affiliate link with that is in the link in the description box, as well as the link in the bio on all of the social media platforms that we currently have pages on. We have pages on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Substack, and TikTok. In the link in the bio on any of those pages, you will find the link of the website that is also moving about at the bottom of this screen. That website is beacons.ai/Jalon Strong. Once you go there, you will see a tab for Rent Reporters. When you click that tab, it will take you to their site, which explains how they are able to assist with helping renters with their on-time rental payments to reflect on their credit reports, thereby improving or increasing that benefit that has helped so many people with improving their credit scores. And as many of you already know, credit is a factor in financing for the home ownership journey. If you are someone that could use that boost in your credit score, please go to the link in the description box or the link in the bio and click the link that says Rent Reporters to get started with them today. If you find that their services are not to your liking after the reporting has started, then you can also go to them for their policy on the or on the process of not being satisfied with the results. So that is the link in the bio highlight of the week. Let's also talk about another business venture that I have, which is Crown First Lady. CrownFirstLady.net is a website where you can go and purchase the First Lady scalp oil in 1 ounce and 4 ounce bottles. Why did I create that company? Well, I created the company because I had my own journey and continue to have my own journey where I am overcoming alopecia. Unfortunately, I went to doctors and dermatologists, and they continue to promote a medication that I am allergic to. So, what was I left to do? As a pharmacist and as someone who just looks to overcome, I decided to come up with my blend of oil to use on myself, having no intention of really making this a business, but just using it as a means to make sure that I see the hair growth and retention and diminished scalp irritation just for myself. And after that, I created my blend. I continued to create my heard from family members to say, hey, can you send me some? I want to try it. And then they're recommending it to their friends or classmates. Next thing I know, I'm getting requests for a bigger bottle. And then I realized you have a business, so let's get it started. And I have before you today one of the 1 ounce bottles. I know that StreamYard is a bit delayed on the video, but the audio still sounds okay. So I'm waiting for the video to update to where you can see me holding up this bottle. Essentially, the bottle has the logo for First Lady Scalp Oil, ingredients, website, warning, and bottle. So hopefully you can see that. This is what one of the 1 ounce bottles would look like. And it is currently for purchase at crownfirstlady.net. We're waiting for looks like StreamYard did a little bit of an update and moving a little bit faster, but took a little break from the video. So we'll keep watching that and we'll get it going. But that is crownfirstlady.net. I would love for you all, if you're interested in trying the product, to try it, give a review, show your support. I would love to see that. Now we're going to go to our FastStats to talk about the new zip code that we're going to be reviewing from Gwinnett County, which is the zip code of 30024, which is the Suwanee, Johns Creek area. I'm going to present my screen so that you can see that PDF of the FastStats for that zip code. And as always, I just want to make sure that we all can see the same information. I'm going to make it a little bigger. And hopefully we all can see it a bit better now. I think that's good. Okay, so this is the March 2025 local market update, courtesy of First Multiple Listing Service, FastStats, for the zip code of 30024, which includes Suwanee, and that's Gwinnett County, and Johns Creek in Fulton County. So I primarily focus in Gwinnett County and DeKalb County. Here is a little bit of a mixture for this zip code. So we're going to take that to our benefit to help us understand this zip code and what could potentially be facing when it comes to the differences from what we've previously seen in the previous zip code that we covered in Lawrenceville to what's different here in this zip code, which can cover 2 counties. We start, as we always do, from the top down. We're also covering a new zip code, so we're going to review everything year to date, and then we're starting with residential detached. We'll then move to residential attached, and residential detached is a property that is not connected to another one, which an example of that would be a single family home. So let's review it. As usual, it reviews March of this year versus the previous year and tells us the change. Then it also discusses the year-to-date data from each individual year and the change of that. Let's get started. New listings for residential detached, March 2024 was a 102, and then March 2025, 119. So we see more new listings with a percent change of 16.7%. For pending sales, we see for March 2024, it was 91, and for March 2025, it was 73, which is a drop of about 20% in pending sales. Pending sales, as many of you know, is when a contract has been established. So we do have an executed contract, but we have not quite made it to the closing table. Sometimes pending sales do make it to the closing table, and sometimes they do not. So this is just an indication of where the market could be going, but it does not mean that it will end in a closed sale. For closed sales, for again, residential detached, in March 2024, it was 78. In March 2025, it was 49, which showed a decrease of 37.2% comparing those months. So here we see that we have more new listings thus far in the comparison as of the latest month. But we see that the pending sales and the closed sales have dropped with double-digit percentages. So let's move on to days on market until sale. As many of you know, I've explained this category several times in previous videos. Days on market until sale means something different than just days on market. Days on market until sale can also be coined or told or said as total days on market. So this indicates the day that the property is listed or properties are listed until the day or days that those properties have sold. It is not reflective of which brokerage had the property when and that indicating that days on market, or it's not just indicating a certain time frame where maybe it went off and went back on. This is the total or cumulative days on market until sale. For March 2024, it was 28. For March 2025, it was 29, showing a 3% increase, only an increase of 1 day. And here we typically want to see these numbers decrease because we want to see if we're a buyer or seller typically. More so on the seller side, you want to see that the days on market is decreasing because that means that your home is likely to sell faster. When the days on market until sale increases, then that means that your home may potentially sit longer on the market. So a seller would love to see this number continually going down. However, under 30 days is still a good metric. So either way, comparing either of these months in these respective years is still a good time frame. Median sales price. Now, again, the sales prices or percent of list prices received, they do not reflect a lot of things such as concessions or any down payment assistance programs. So keep that in mind with these asterisks that you see on the screen. For median sales price for March 2024, it was $630,000. For March 2025, it was $710,000, which showed an increase of about 13%. Now, I want to just pause because when we have reviewed this county or Gwinnett County in particular in the past, we have not seen the numbers that we are looking at right now. And I want to remind everyone, and I'll scroll up, that this zip code encompasses Gwinnett and Gwinnett and Fulton County. So this includes Suwanee in Gwinnett County and Johns Creek in Fulton County. So that could also influence why we are seeing a much higher sales price or median sales price for this FastStats for this zip code. So this looks totally different than what we saw with just the Lawrenceville zip code of 30043. So we're looking at a mixture of counties. Does that make sense? It does. And hopefully this just gives you an indication of what we mean as real estate agents when we say, you know, it matters where you want to live. Sometimes the zip code itself can influence what that price point looks like. With point in 30043, we might have been in the 400s, but here we're in the 700s. So it does matter, the zip code. So those are things that we really lean on the pre-approval letter to help us indicate which zip codes or which counties or even down to neighborhoods would be most affordable for you, because as real estate experts, we have to consider your best interest, including not putting you in a position to be house poor. So that pre-approval letter is vital in the process of the home purchase or home ownership journey. Now let's look to the average sales price. Again, has the same asterisk, same disclosure. March 2024, $742,775. For March 2025, $823,342, which shows an increase of about 11% on the average sales price. For many of you that have seen this video or similar videos in the past, you already know the difference between median and average. Median, line up all of the values or all of the sales prices in this example. For that time frame, you will find the value in the middle to be the median. If you're looking for the average, you take all of those sales prices for this particular scenario and divide them by the number of sales prices or the number of sales in this case in that time frame. And that gives you the average. So there is a difference between median and average, which is why you can sometimes see a greater difference in the numbers. So the middle point just showed us what we could expect at the median or the middle of all the sales prices. But the average tells us with the largest and the least included, looking at all of the quantity of sales that there were, these are the values that you're likely to possibly encounter on average. And we see that the values last year as well as this year are much higher than the median sales prices were. Let's move on to the percent of list price received. For March 2024, it was 99.9%. For March 2025, it was 98.8%, which showed a decrease of 1.1%. We typically would like to see this value as close to 100, if not 100%. That gives us the indication in theory that all of the homes that were listed were priced accurately and sold accurately as priced. And if that were to occur, then these numbers should be 100%. This also has that asterisk as well, so keep that in mind. Both of these values are quite close to 100%, and I wouldn't take much away from our current value versus the value from last year, looking at that metric. The inventory of homes for sale for March 2024 was 77. For March 2025, 164. And that shows a percent change of 113%. What does that mean? Inventory of homes for sale. That means that we have more inventory for sale based on our latest metrics or latest data being March 2025 than we did in the previous year. There are more homes for sale than there were in the previous year. And just to reference what we discussed above, we have more new listings, but less pending and closed sales. Not much has changed with the days on market until sale, though. But the sales prices, whether median or average, have increased. Now let's look at the month supply of inventory. For March 2024, it was 1.1. For March 2025, it was 2.6, showing a 136.4% increase. Month supply of inventory means that it could take us this time frame, let's say 1.1 or a little over 1 month back in March 2024, for all the inventory that was on the market at that time with no additional inventory being added, for all that inventory to sell. Same thing for March 2025. This saying that 2.6 months would be needed for all the inventory at that time with nothing else being added to sell. Now, these are not alarming numbers compared to what we've seen in times past with other zip codes. However, with the amount of inventory that we see being well over, let's say well over double what it was in the previous year, that number may likely increase if the sales pending or closed do not increase. So we'll be interested to see what happens with this zip code, especially because it covers 2 different counties, how these numbers fare over time. Now, year-to-date data through March 2024, new listings, it was 248. Through March 2025, it was 288, which showed a 16.1% increase. And that is through March of both of the years. So it does not give us a full picture of either years. It gives us a 3-month time frame. So that's quarter data, essentially. And it doesn't really give us a whole lot to utilize as far as being a seller or buyer or representing a seller or buyer with just that data. So we'll continue to look in the future for more data to see where this lands. Pending sales through March 2024 was 226. Through March 2025, 173, which shows a drop of about 24%. And again, reflecting what we saw just comparing the months, it has decreased from last year. For closed sales through March 2024, it was 167. And through March 2025, 136, where you see a decrease of about 19%, similar to what we saw just looking at the months. The month of So we are seeing less pending sales and closed sales, not just for the month, but for year-to-date data as well. Days on market until sale through March 2024 was 29, and through March 2025 was 41, showing an increase of 41.4%. Now, this is where it stands out to me, the days on market until sale, because even though just the month of March did not show much difference, somehow just looking at the year-to-date data, we see that we are having the homes on the market for a bit longer at this point, at this quarter mark, than we did in the previous year. So this is where year-to-date data is helpful, because the month-to-month data could be, not enough for us to really tell what could be a trend going on in this market. And what we can see from the year-to-date data, which is also can be considered quarterly data at this point, is that it's taking a bit longer. We crossed over the 30-day time frame for houses to sell in this market. And that's something as a seller I would want to know and watch. Median sales price year to date through March 2024 was $615,000. Year to date through March 2025, $666,000, which showed an increase of 8.3%. So even though it's taking longer for homes to sell in this market based on this data from the year-to-date columns, and we don't have as many sales as we once did, the sales prices are higher. So this is one of the things that I try to remind any customers or clients that I work with about. When they're looking at certain aspects, there's sometimes an inverse relationship going on, whereas when we have some values decreasing, others are rising. So what I'm noticing based on this market is that the sales have decreased, but the sales prices are increasing. And you all can let me know in the comments if you see that as well. Now, year-to-date data for average sales price through March 2024 was $713,312. Through March 2025, $803,350, which showed an increase of about 13%. Now, these values for the year-to-date data are less than what we saw just looking at the month of March 2025, which again gives us a reminder that median is the middle point of all the values that were included, and then average is the value, or it's the number that you get from having all the sales prices divided by the quantity of sales prices that were included. And that's why we see such difference between year to date and just looking at the months of March for both years. Now, for year to date data for the last metric, we see percent of list price received, which was 99.6% through March 2024 and 98.5% through March 2025, showing a 1.1% decrease, which is the same percent decrease that we saw from the previous month-to-month data, but different values. So these values are still quite close to 100%, so there's not much to take from that as well. Now, as you see the days on market until sale extend as we continue to review this data, and we continue to see fluctuation in possibly the sales prices, whether median or average, we might see that number, that percent of list price received, drift a little bit lower. And because this is data that has an asterisk where it is not taking into account any down payment assistance or concessions, they may be impacting those metrics, the sales prices and the percent of list price received here, to accommodate for any type of negotiations or accommodations needed that could help the buyer potentially buy the home quicker. Hopefully that made sense. So I'm going to pause here because that is the end of the residential detached data as far as the chart. And I'm going to come back and see if we have any questions in our comment section. If you do have any questions, make sure that you leave them in the comment section. This is just another reminder Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any content that we are posting, upload, or anytime we go live on this channel. And we talk about our metrics, our market quite often. So if you're interested in this, talking about a new zip code here, so we try to keep different rotations of zip codes so that you can stay fresh in this market of Gwinnett and DeKalb counties in particular. But here we get a little splash of Fulton County as well. So if you're interested in that type of data or seeing this in the future, make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. It keeps us in the algorithm. It keeps us to where you can see us more often and we can come across your feed more often with this type of material. Going back to the table, we're going to now talk about residential attached property with the same metrics. And I won't explain as much with this because I explained the metrics and the criteria of them with the residential detached categories. But it's the same categories, same metrics. Residential attached is just saying that the property is attached to another one, such as some of your townhomes. So if it's connected to another property, it is categorized as residential attached. Now let's look at the key metrics for March. And starting with new listings for March 2024, we have 17. For March 2025, 33. And that shows a percent change of 94.1%. So the common theme that we have typically seen, no matter what zip code we reviewed thus far, is that the values for the properties, when we look at new listings and sales, are much lower under residential attached than residential detached. So I'm going to scroll up because I want everyone to kind of see what I'm saying. If it will scroll up with me. So what I'm meaning by that is if you just look at the new listings, pending sales, and closed sales for residential detached, we had numbers in the hundreds, 90s, 70s, 40s at the lowest. Now, when you go to our residential attached, we're starting out in the teens, the 30s, those. So for the theme of what we have seen thus far, and this is a blended zip code, which has Gwinnett and Fulton County included. But when we just look at Gwinnett County thus far, the theme is that the county really has a thriving market for residential detached properties. It tends to look more for detached properties. And we will see, looking at this data, if it is the same for this mixture or melting pot of Gwinnett and Fulton County. So again, new listings, 17 in 2024, 33 in 2025. So we have more new listings for this particular zip code, which again is 30024, and this is the residential attached metric. For pending sales for March 2024, it was 22. For March 2025, it was 17, which showed a percent change of 22.7%. Now, pending sales is not that far off, though with smaller numbers, there is a higher percent change, but the pending sales have dropped as of March 2025. Closed sales for March 2024, it was 19 and 14 for 2025. Again, the percent difference is a bigger percentage. It's 26.3% because of the numbers being so much smaller. But we do have less closed sales and pending sales and more new listings. So we have the same trend going on with new listings, pending sales, and closed sales with both residential detached and residential attached properties for this zip code 30024. Now, let's look at days on market until sale. For March 2024, it was 44. For March 2025, it was 31, which showed a decrease of about 30%. This is a good thing because this is saying that at this particular time, it was taking a shorter period of time for properties to sell, as opposed to what it took the previous year. So that's an encouraging thing to note. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we review the year-to-date data for this category of residential attached. Now let's look at median sales prices. For March 2024, it was $524,000. For March 2025, it was $490,000, which showed a decrease of 6.5% for the median sales price. Now, these are numbers that are a bit closer to what we have typically seen for residential detached properties for Gwinnett County, but this is the residential attached. And so that's something you have to consider. If, like we talked about on step 5 of the Bingo to Home Ownership series, if your non-negotiable is that your property be residential detached, but you really want to live in a zip code that, let's say, is 30024 based on distance from work, school, church, what have you. But your pre-approval is $500,000, right? Based on this type of data, you might assume that your best bet is to go for residential attached if your primary zip code of focus is 30024, right? Again, this is median sales price that we're looking at. There are prices above and below. However, this type of data can cue you in on what those prices might be around this value, if this is the middle point, right? So that's something to think about. How strict are your non-negotiables? How flexible can you be on certain things? Because the more things you have on that non-negotiable list and the more strict you are with certain things, the more you might honestly be leaning toward building your own home. So where are your preferences? And those preferences are really areas where you can be a little flexible, and where are your non-negotiables. So this kind of cued you in to think of that, because that price point, that pre-approval, if you need financing, the lender is not going to waiver on that. So you're going to have to either produce the remaining amount or be within that pre-approval amount. So keep that in mind. Average sales price for March 2024 was $502,376. For March 2025, it was $503,271, which didn't show much of a percent change, with only 0.2% difference. And that's in the increasing area as we look at the latest month of March 2025. So the numbers really aren't that extreme or aren't as large as what we saw for residential detached for this same zip code. Now let's move to the percent of list price received. For March 2024, it was 98.7%. For March 2025, it was 98.4%, which showed a decrease of 0.3%. Both of these values are quite close to 100% and quite close to each other. So there's not much to take away from that. Now looking at inventory of homes for sale for March 2024, it was 19. For March 2025, it was 48, which showed an increase of 152.6%, which means we have more inventory for sale for this zip code with this property type of residential attached than we did in the previous year, and it's significant. Now let's look at the month supply of inventory. For March 2024, it was 1.2, quite similar to what it was for residential detached. And then for March 2025, it was 3.5, which is the largest value in this column for either residential attached or detached for the zip code for this month. So that showed a 191.7% increase, moving toward the most recent month of March 2025. So it would take 3.5 months for all the current inventory at that time in March to have sold with nothing else being added. Where the year prior, it would have taken 1.2 months for the inventory on the market at that time to have sold. This is a good indicator of having more properties to review or to potentially tour or assess for buying if you are a buyer. For a seller, this could mean not the best sign, because that could mean that your property is sitting on the market potentially a little bit longer. Year to date, same metric. Let's look through March 2024 For new listings, it was 54. Through March 2025, it was 77, which showed a percent change of 42.6%, meaning there were more new listings this quarter than in the previous year. Now, pending sales, it was 51 for March 2024, and through March 2025, it was 47, which showed a decrease of about 8%, which matches what we saw with all of the other situations for residential month to month, year to date, and even for residential detached, we saw the same trend. There's a lower amount of pending sales, and also up until this year to date data that we're about to review right now, closed sales. So here we see for year to date through March 2024, it was 43 closed sales, and the same value through March 2025. So there was no change. In all the other metrics, we saw that this value was decreasing as well, but we are right on target this year, this quarter, with the closed sales as we were last year. Now, days on market until sale year to date through March 2024 was 56, and through March 2025 was 40. So this is another positive indicator if you're concerned about days on market until sale, which most sellers may be concerned with, is that this zip code for residential attached might be most favorable for you, as the days on market until sale is much less than it was this time last year. And that showed about a 29% decrease. So that's a favorable metric to see for this zip code for this property type. Year to date, median sales price for March or through March 2024, it was $506,000. Through March 2025, it was $490,000, which showed a decrease of 3.2%. Again, median is the middle value. So through the timeframes that we see, which are really quarter timeframes at this point, we see that the value is the same for March 2025 as the year to date through March 2025. And we see that year to date from the previous year is less than it was for March 2024. So that could be encouraging, because it could be a sign that we're seeing the prices drop a little bit in this market. If you're someone that's interested in this market, that could be an encouraging sign, especially with all the things going on in the state of the world, to potentially have this type of property type in this area, this zip code of 30024, have a decreasing sales price for potential buyers. That could be encouraging. For sellers, that may not be as encouraging, but let's continue to look at the values. Now, again, 490,000 from 506,000, not totally astronomically significant, but it is a difference. And if you're, someone who has put a great deal into your home, any drop in its value could be impactful. Now, just because a property sells for a certain price doesn't mean that was its value. That could have been just what it was negotiated for. So keep that in mind as well. For average sales price year to date through March 2024, it was $497,719. And average sales price through March 2025 was $501,265. That's an increase of 0.7%. Not a statistically significant increase, but it is an increase in average sales price. Now, let's look at the percent of list price received year to date through March 2024, 98.6%. Through March 2025, 98.2%, showing a decrease of 0.4%. Again, similar to what I said for the month-to-month data, both values are close to 100% and close to each other. It's not much that we can take away from that metric at this time. All right, I'm going to pause here before we go into our graphs and just see if there are any questions in the comment section. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. We will reply to them as we see them and give you the most appropriate answer. And even if you're watching this on the replay, make sure that you leave a comment, question down in the comment section. Let's see some engagement. Even if you like the content, don't like the content, let us know in the comment section, and we can try to make sure that we take your comments into consideration. However, make sure to make them respectful and do not put anything confidential in the comments section. If you want to discuss anything confidential about your specifics in that, we would like for you to discuss in a scheduled consultation, which you can make from the link in the description box or the link moving about at the bottom of the screen, which is beacon.ai/. You can schedule your free consultation that you will incur a $15 no-show non-refundable fee. We like to maximize our availability to have time available for our customers and clients, and taking that time away is something that we don't want to do if everybody is not going to participate. So that is why a $15 no-show non-refundable fee is assessed for that reason. Let's get back to the data. Let's look at the graphs and close it out. So just to close out the graphs, for the median sales price for residential attached, which is the graph on the left, we see that the line that shows the zip code that we have been referencing for this video is 30024, which is in green. And then the all MLS data, which in this case is the first multiple listing service, all of that MLS data is in the gray. This graph is a rolling 12-month calculation. So as we continue to look at new months, the older months fade off, and we continue to see the progression of where this current month is, as well as the 11 months prior in a single data point. And if no activity occurred during a month, the line extends to the next available data point. So here we see that the graph starts with January 2014. Both lines are present. The all MLS line, which is in gray, is not quite at the $200,000 mark, whereas the green line, which is the zip code of 30024, is right about in the middle, if not above the middle of the 200, in between the $200,000 and $300,000 marks. And as we go on, we see that around, let's say, the pandemic. So let's get to January 2020. We see that the all MLS data is where the zip code 30024 may have started. It's right around there. But then the zip code of 30024 is approaching the $400,000 mark. And then as we get deeper into the pandemic, we see that there's a bit of a bumpy road for this zip code, but it continues to climb, and it really starts to see an incline just before January 2022. It takes a slight dip, and then it continues to incline much into January 2023, has a bit of another bumpy phase after that, but continues to incline, leaving us at the end of this graph just under the $700,000 mark. Whereas the all MLS line, once we got to the pandemic, it was just under the $300,000 mark. It did a slight incline going to and past the January 2022 mark. It does a little bit of a decline once we reach January 2023, where it is just under the $400,000 mark. And it seems to plateau after that, just under, if not at the $400,000 mark. So what we can take away from this graph is that this particular zip code has, price-wise, with the median sales price being the value that we're assessing here, it stands quite significantly above the rest of the MLS or the all MLS data. So it stands out, it stands above, and it has not connected at any point from this data with the all MLS data. Now let's look at the median sales price for residential attached. Same category, same time frame, same disclaimers, but with the all MLS, that data for January 2014 starts maybe at $150,000, whereas the zip code 30024 in the green is just under the $200,000 mark. Now, they seem to come closer together when we are in the midst of 2015. And there also seems to be a bit of a bumpy road for the zip code with this property type, where even though it isn't increasing in the median sales price, it is much closer initially to the all MLS line. However, once we get to 2018, it seems that the divide between the two lines is greater. And we see that the zip code of 30024 approaches the $300,000 mark, or reaches the $300,000 mark just after January of 2018. Whereas at that point, the all MLS line is just reaching the $200,000 mark. And the lines continue to increase. The all MLS line is not on as high of an increase, but more on a diagonal steady incline over time. And it reaches the $300,000 mark just after January of 2022. And then at that time, we see that there's a more pronounced increase for the zip code of 30024 for this property type, where it is at the $400,000 mark at January 2022. And it steadily inclines in almost like a mountainous fashion. And it reaches the $500,000 mark at January 2024, where the all MLS data is just hovering under the $350,000 mark. And the graphs end after the zip code has done a bit of a jump up and then come back down a little bit to the $500,000 mark. And the all MLS data just around the $350,000 mark. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to come back and just talk about, what does this mean? What have we seen? Essentially, we have seen something that is interesting compared to what we've seen before. We have seen before data for Gwinnett County alone. With this, we are seeing something a bit different. We are seeing data for Gwinnett and Fulton County, and we are seeing the sales prices are much higher. The listings and sales prices, the listings, pending sales, and closed sales seem to have a similar trend, whether it was residential attached or residential detached. The percent of list price received, given the exclusions that were noted, seems to be similar across the board. There's nothing drastically different about that. We also saw that year-to-date data was quite similar to the month-to-month data, with the exception that the year-to-date data for residential attached for this zip code showed that there was no difference with the closed sales. We were right on task for what sales were last year. We noted that the median and average sales prices are much higher than we saw with the Gwinnett County zip code of 30043 in the past. And if pre-approval is a limiting factor, or the amount of money that could be financed for any particular home buyer was a factor in determining which zip code to search for homes in, then this could be a discussion between the potential home buyer and the real estate agent of how strongly that particular home buyer feels about a property type. What we've seen across Gwinnett County is a favoring of residential detached, not to say that residential attached is not available, but residential detached shows up in greater numbers across the board than residential attached has. Even with this mixed zip code, which covers Gwinnett and Fulton County, we've seen the same trend. So there's something to take away from this. Hopefully, if you are someone who is looking to buy, or you know someone who is interested in buying now or in the future, that these are things you can consider. Hopefully, it opens the conversation to discuss with your real estate agent what you're looking for, what truly are your non-negotiables, and what just are your preferences. If you have issues with discerning which is which, you may find benefit in reviewing the Step 5, which is the most recent live that we've done prior to this one on this channel, which is in the Bingo to Home Ownership series. Step 5 was create a wish list. So if you're not sure how to do your non-negotiables, or what should be, or how should you go about creating your wish list, that should be helpful to you, and we would recommend that you review it. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to leave them in the comment section. Make sure that you don't leave anything confidential in the comment section, so that you don't put yourself in a situation to have your information exposed on the World Wide Web. However, if you're interested in a consultation, you can do that at the link in the description box, which is moving about at the bottom of your screen, which is beacons.ai/Jalon Strong. You can also find the link in the bio on any social media platform that we have a page on, which is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Substack. From there, you can click the tab that says Let's Talk, or you can go straight to our website, that is dtkrealty.com. Click the tab that says Book Me and schedule a consultation. Consultations are free video consultations where you will be expected to be on video for the time period of that consultation. This consultation gives you 1 hour or less to talk with me about a specific scenario and how I can best help you. If you schedule a consultation and you do not attend, you will incur a $15 no-show fee. That is the only way that you are going to have a consultation with me. Calling the business line does not substitute for a consultation. If you are someone that is interested in getting a referral because you know that you need services or you're outside of my market area, then please make sure to text the word referral, REFERRAL, to the number 770-758-5641. We will contact you and we will help you get started with the referral process. And we will connect you with one who is interested in assisting you in your area and for the services that you're looking for. So with no questions at this time, I'm going to end, and I will see you all in the next one where we will be reviewing the FastStats for DeKalb County. Hope to see you in the next live. Thank you for joining Dreams to Keys Realty YouTube channel. Dreams to Keys Realty is where your dreams turn into keys. I'm your host, Jalon Strong, the Essential Millennial Realtor. In the next video.